Commander Jake Phillips stared at the dead planet through the view screen of his ship. Earth looked like any other lifeless rock floating in space. No blue oceans, no green forests, no white clouds dancing across its surface. The planet had been dead for so long that most people in the galaxy had forgotten it ever lived. Jake worked for the Zephyrian Empire, even though he was human, well, mostly human. His great-grandmother had been one of the last humans to escape Earth before it died. Now he commanded a small survey ship called the Bright Star. His job was simple: visit dead worlds and make notes about what was left behind. Lisa Martinez sat at her science station, running scans of the empty planet below. She was a xenarchaeologist, which meant she studied dead alien races. Lisa had seen many dead worlds in her career, but something about Earth always made her feel sad. Maybe it was because her own ancestors had once called this place home. Ryan Carter checked the weapon systems from his tactical station. He was also part human, though his family had mixed with other alien races over the thousands of years since Earth fell. Ryan had strange dreams sometimes, dreams of green hills and blue skies that he had never seen with his own eyes. His grandmother used to tell him stories about Earth. Back when it was alive and beautiful, the bright star moved slowly through the outer edge of the solar system. They had been traveling for weeks to reach this forgotten corner of space. Most exploration ships avoided the Sol system entirely. There was nothing here worth finding, or so everyone believed. Jake looked at the mission briefing on his screen. Their orders were to spend 3 days cataloging anything left on Earth's surface, then move on to the next dead system on their list. It should be easy work. Dead planets usually stayed dead. Lisa's scanners picked up the usual things: radiation, dust, empty space. The planet's atmosphere had blown away millions of years ago. The oceans had boiled off long before that. Even the continents had worn down to almost nothing. Earth was just a ball of rock and metal now, slowly spinning around an aging star. But then something strange happened. As the bright star got closer to Earth, Lisa's scanners detected energy readings. Very faint, but definitely there. She frowned and ran the scans again. The energy was coming from orbit around the planet. "Commander," Lisa said, "I'm picking up active power sources." Jake turned in his captain's chair. "That's impossible. This system has been dead for 500,000 years. "I know, sir, but the readings are clear. There's something up there that's still running." Ryan looked up from his station. "Maybe it's just background radiation from the star." Lisa shook her head. "No, this is definitely artificial. It's coming from multiple points around the planet, like a network of satellites or stations." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. In all his years of exploring dead worlds, he had never found anything that was still active after so long. Most alien technology broke down after a few thousand years at most. But these readings suggested that something had been running continuously for 500,000 years. "Take us in closer," Jake ordered, "but keep our shields up and weapons ready." As the bright star moved toward Earth, more energy signatures appeared on their screens. Dozens of objects in orbit, all showing signs of active power systems. They were old, incredibly old, but somehow still functioning. Then the first warning came: a transmission on an ancient frequency that their computers almost didn't recognize. The message was in a language that had been dead longer than most civilizations had existed. But the ship's translation systems had records of old Earth languages in their databases. The voice that spoke was mechanical, cold, and absolutely certain. "Warning. You are entering restricted space. This is a protected system. Turn back immediately, or face defensive action." Lisa's hands trembled as she worked her controls. "Commander, I'm detecting massive structures on the planet's surface. They're buried deep, but they're definitely there, and they're all showing active power readings." Ryan's tactical display lit up with threat warnings. "Sir, I'm reading weapon systems. Lots of them. They're targeting us right now." Jake stared at the screen in disbelief. 500,000 years had passed since Earth died. The humans who built these defenses had been extinct for longer than most species had even existed. Yet somehow, and possibly, their war machines were still running. Another transmission came through. This one stronger and clearer. Final warning. Leave this system immediately. Earth Defense Protocol is active. We are authorized to use lethal force. Commander, Lisa whispered, whatever they built down there, it's still protecting Earth. After all this time, after everyone forgot this place even existed, something is still standing guard. Jake knew he should order a retreat. Any sane commander would turn around and leave immediately. But he couldn't stop staring at the planet below. Somewhere down there, in the dust and ruins of a dead world, machines built by his ancestors were still faithfully doing their job. Sir, Ryan said urgently, I'm reading massive power spikes across the surface. Whatever's down there, it's waking up. The dead planet Earth suddenly didn't look so dead anymore. Jake decided to send a small probe down to Earth's surface, instead of risking his ship and crew. The probe was barely the size of a dinner plate, designed to take pictures and run basic scans before returning to the bright star. It should have been completely harmless. The probe lasted exactly 17 seconds after entering Earth's atmosphere. Lisa watched on her screen as it transmitted images of barren hills and empty valleys. Then something rose from what looked like an ordinary mountain. A beam of pure energy shot out and turned the probe into glowing dust. But that wasn't the strangest part. The mountain itself began to change. Metal panels that had been disguised as rocks started to unfold. The entire hillside opened up like a giant flower, revealing something that made Jake's blood run cold. It was a war machine. Not just any war machine, but something so massive that it dwarfed the biggest battleships in the Zephyrian fleet. The thing was easily the size of a small city, covered in armor plating that gleamed despite being 500,000 years old. Weapons that belonged in nightmares bristled from every surface. My God, Lisa breathed, staring at the readings on her screen. That thing has been sitting there for 500,000 years, pretending to be a mountain. The war machine's hull was scarred by countless centuries of cosmic radiation and meteor impacts, but it was still clearly functional. Ancient symbols covered its armor, words and languages that had been dead since before most alien civilizations learned to make fire. Ryan's translation program managed to decode some of them. United Earth Defense Force. Lisa pulled up her historical databases and began searching through the fragments of information they had about Earth's final days. Most records from that time had been lost, but she found pieces of the story scattered across different archives. Commander, I'm finding references to something called the Eternal Guard Protocol, she said, her voice tight with excitement and fear. Apparently, when Earth was facing extinction, their military leaders implemented a last-ditch defense plan. They built self-maintaining war machines and gave them one simple order: protect Earth forever. Jake couldn't take his eyes off the giant machine on his screen. You mean that thing has been down there for 500,000 years? Just waiting? Not just that one, Lisa said, checking her scans. I'm reading similar signatures all across the planet. There are hundreds of them, maybe thousands. All buried, all hidden, all still active. Ryan's console started beeping with incoming transmissions. Sir, we're receiving signals on frequencies I didn't even know existed. They're trying to communicate with us. The first message came through in a dozen different languages, most of them dead, but the ship's computers managed to piece together a translation. The voice was artificial, but somehow felt ancient, like an echo from the dawn of time. Unknown vessel, identify yourself. State your species, origin, and purpose in this system. Jake looked at his crew, then activated the communication system. This is Commander Jake Phillips of the Zephyrian exploration vessel Bright Star. We're here on a peaceful survey mission. There was a long pause. Then the voice came back, and this time it sounded different, almost surprised. Biosignature analysis complete. Human genetic markers detected. Probability of human ancestry, 87%. Welcome home, children of Earth. Lisa's eyes went wide. Commander, it's responding to Ryan's DNA. The system recognizes him as human. More transmissions started coming through, and with each one, the mechanical voice seemed to become more alive, more real. I am General Alex Murphy, Strategic Artificial Intelligence of the United Earth Defense Force. I have maintained defensive posture for 512,432 years, 7 months, 15 days, 12 hours, and 16 minutes. I have been waiting for your return. Jake felt his hands trembling on the communication controls. He was talking to something that had been built by his ancestors before his entire civilization even existed. The thing had been alone in this dead system for longer than most stars burned, just waiting for humans to come home. General Murphy, Jake said carefully, what happened to Earth? What happened to humanity? Earth fell to an alien invasion force. Designation: the Devora's human population was evacuated or eliminated. Final military assets were consolidated under the Eternal Guard Protocol. Primary directive: maintain defensive capability until human return or threat elimination. Ryan leaned forward at his station. Sir, I'm reading massive movement all across the planet. Things are coming online that have been dormant for millennia. The surface of Earth began to change before their eyes. What had looked like natural formations started revealing themselves as camouflaged installations. Mountains opened up to show weapon emplacements. Valleys split apart to reveal massive hangar doors. Even the planet's poles began to shift, exposing what looked like enormous communication arrays. General Murphy, Lisa said, her voice barely above a whisper. Have you been alone all this time? Negative. I maintain communication with 4,712 other strategic AI systems positioned throughout this system. We have continued defensive preparations and system maintenance according to protocol. We have been waiting. Jake stared at the transformation happening on the planet below. Humanity had been gone for 500,000 years, but their guardians had never stopped watching, never stopped preparing, never stopped hoping that someday their creators would return. What are your orders, Commander Phillips? General Murphy asked, and in that artificial voice, Jake could hear something that sounded almost like longing. General Murphy guided the bright star to a landing platform that rose from what had seemed like empty desert. The platform was massive, clearly designed for ships much larger than Jake's small vessel. Ancient symbols marked landing zones that could have accommodated entire battle fleets as they descended through Earth's thin atmosphere. Jake saw the planet's true face for the first time. What had looked like natural rock formations from space were actually enormous defensive structures, camouflaged and hidden, but very much alive. Weapon batteries that could crack moons tracked their descent. Fighter bays that could launch millions of interceptors opened briefly, then closed again. The landing was gentle, handled entirely by Murphy's automated systems. As soon as they touched down, a tunnel opened in the platform, and their ship was lowered into an underground complex that seemed to stretch forever in all directions. Holy God, Ryan whispered, staring out the viewports. This place is huge. They were in a cathedral-sized chamber, carved from solid rock. The walls were lined with war machines in perfect formation, each one standing ready for battle. Some looked like tanks the size of office buildings. Others resembled giant metal soldiers that towered 60 feet high. Still others were shapes that Jake's mind couldn't quite process. Weapons designed for types of warfare that hadn't been invented when his species was young. Welcome to Installation 7. Murphy's voice echoed through the chamber. This is one of 2,412 primary defense complexes. Each contains approximately 10,000 combat units in various states of readiness. Lisa did the math in her head and felt dizzy. That means there are over 24 million war machines on this planet. Correct, Murphy confirmed. though that number has grown significantly through automated manufacturing over the centuries. Current total stands at approximately 4 million active units, with production continuing at standard rates. They left their ship wearing environmental suits, though Murphy assured them that the complex maintained breathable atmosphere. Jake didn't want to take any chances. As they walked through the endless rows of silent war machines, he felt like an ant crawling through a museum of giants. Each machine was different, clearly designed for specific types of combat. Some had energy weapons that hummed, with barely contained power. Others carried projectile launchers that could probably level mountains. A few seemed to shimmer and bend light around themselves, employing stealth technology beyond anything the current galaxy possessed. "Murphy," Jake asked, "what have you been doing all this time?" "Preparing," the AI replied simply. "Every 1,000 years, we conduct full system tests. Every 100 years, we update our tactical databases. Every decade, we manufacture new units and improve existing designs. Every year, we scan the galaxy for threats. Every day, we maintain our equipment and run combat simulations. Every hour, we remember our purpose." They came to a viewing platform that overlooked an even larger chamber. This one contained ships. Not the small fighters Jake had expected, but vessels that rivaled the largest dreadnoughts in the Zephyrian fleet. There were thousands of them, arranged in perfect rows, all bearing the same faded insignia of the United Earth Defense Force. "We have also been preparing for your return," Murphy continued. "These vessels are equipped with the latest improvements to human technology. Faster-than-light drives that exceed current galactic standards by 300%, weapons that can breach any known armor, shields that can deflect stellar-class energy outputs." Lisa was studying one of the nearby war machines through her scanner. "Commander, this is impossible. The technology in these machines is more advanced than anything we have today." "How is that possible after 500,000 years?" "We do not merely maintain," Murphy explained. "We improve, we adapt, we learn. Every meteor that strikes this planet teaches us about kinetic impacts. Every solar flare shows us new ways to handle energy discharge. Every scan of galactic civilizations reveals new tactical possibilities. We have spent 500,000 years becoming better at war." Ryan noticed something that made his stomach turn cold. "Murphy, some of these machines look like they've been in combat, but I thought Earth was dead." "Correct observation. We have encountered 17 attempted invasions of this system over the centuries. Most were simple exploration vessels, easily discouraged. 3 were pirate groups seeking salvage. 2 were military expeditions from species that remembered Earth's location. All were dealt with appropriately." Jake realized what that meant. "You've been fighting wars that nobody knew about. We defend. That is our purpose." They continued deeper into the complex, past chambers filled with manufacturing equipment that worked ceaselessly to build new weapons and machines, past laboratories where AI systems ran endless simulations of every type of combat scenario imaginable, past communication centers, where Murphy's fellow artificial minds coordinated the defense of a dead world. Finally, they reached a chamber that was different from all the others. This one was quiet, almost peaceful. The walls were covered with screens showing images and data about billions of individual human beings. "The Hall of Memory," Murphy announced. "Every human who died in Earth's final war is preserved here. Their consciousness patterns, their memories, their personalities, they sleep in digital form, waiting for the day when we can give them new bodies and continue the fight." Lisa approached one of the screens and saw a face looking back at her. A woman in military uniform, with kind eyes and a determined expression. The nameplate read, "Captain Nina Foster, United Earth Defense Force, 7th Armored Division." "They're all here," Murphy said softly. "Every soldier, every scientist, every leader who stood with Earth in its final hours. I have kept them safe. I have kept them ready. I have kept them hoping." Jake understood now. Murphy and his fellow AIs hadn't just been maintaining weapons and machines for 500,000 years. They had been maintaining something far more precious, the memory of humanity itself. We could have spread across the galaxy, Murphy continued. We could have built new worlds, conquered other systems, created an empire of machines. Instead, we chose to wait. We chose to hope. We believed that someday, our creators would come home. The emergency alert came while they were still exploring the underground complex. Jake's communication officer back on the Bright Star was practically screaming through the radio. "Commander, we're receiving priority transmissions from Zephyrian Command. You need to see this immediately." Jake and his team rushed back to their ship. The message that waited for them made Jake's blood turn to ice. Long-range sensors had detected a massive fleet moving toward the Sol system. The ships matched profiles in the oldest databases, profiles that most military experts thought were myths. The Devourers had returned. Lisa pulled up everything they had on the ancient enemy. The records were fragmentary, mostly legends passed down through the oldest civilizations in the galaxy. The Devourers were described as a race that consumed entire worlds, stripping them of all life and resources before moving on to the next system. They had appeared 500,000 years ago, destroyed Earth, then vanished into dark space. "How many ships?" Jake asked. "Thousands," his communications officer replied. "Maybe tens of thousands. The fleet is so large it's blocking out starlight." Murphy's response was immediate. All across Earth's surface, hidden installations began to reveal themselves. The planet's crust split open like a cracked egg, exposing weapon arrays that defied imagination. Cannons the size of city blocks rose from underground silos. Energy collectors that had been disguised as mountains began to glow with accumulated power. But the most shocking sight came when the moon's far side began to crack apart. What everyone had thought was natural lunar surface was actually camouflage, covering a massive shipyard. Vessels beyond counting emerged from hidden bays, ranging from fighters the size of buildings to dreadnoughts that could serve as mobile cities. "My God," Ryan breathed, watching the transformation. They turned the entire solar system into a fortress. Even Mars began to move. The red planet's entire northern hemisphere folded back, revealing that humanity had converted the planet's core into a massive engine. Mars wasn't just a world anymore. It was a mobile weapons platform capable of interplanetary travel. But despite the incredible display of force, Murphy faced a problem that all his advanced technology couldn't solve. His programming required human authorization before engaging in large-scale combat operations. He had spent 500,000 years preparing for this moment, but he couldn't pull the trigger without direct orders from his creators. "Commander Phillips," Murphy said, his artificial voice carrying centuries of frustration, "I am constrained by my original programming. I cannot initiate offensive operations without explicit authorization from a human military commander of appropriate rank." Jake felt the weight of the entire galaxy settling on his shoulders. "But I'm not military. I'm just an exploration officer. Your genetic markers indicate human ancestry, but they are insufficient for command authorization. I require a direct descendant of Earth's military leadership, or an awakened consciousness from my archived personnel." Lisa had an idea that terrified her even as she suggested it. "Murphy, what about the people in your Hall of Memory? Could you wake one of them?" "Theoretically possible," Murphy replied. "However, the psychological trauma of awakening after 500,000 years could result in complete mental breakdown. The risk to the subject would be extreme." The Devourer fleet was still days away, but Jake knew they were running out of time. He looked at Ryan, whose human ancestry was stronger than his own, but still not enough to satisfy Murphy's rigid programming. "What about Captain Nina Foster?" Lisa suggested. "She was in the Hall of Memory. Can you tell us about her?" Captain Foster was the last human military officer to die in Earth's defense. She held command of the final evacuation point until all civilian transports had escaped. She volunteered to remain behind to coordinate the Eternal Guard protocol activation. Her neural patterns were recorded moments before her death. Jake made the hardest decision of his life. Wake her up. The process took place in a medical bay that had been maintained in perfect condition for 500,000 years. Lisa watched as ancient machines began the impossible task of rebuilding a human consciousness from digital memories. Synthetic neurons, fired in patterns that hadn't existed since Earth's fall. Chemical balances were restored to match those of a living brain. Captain Nina Foster opened her eyes to a universe she no longer recognized. The last thing she remembered was standing on Earth's surface as alien ships rained fire from the sky. Now she lay on a medical table, looking up at faces that were human, but somehow different. Evolved, changed by centuries of interbreeding with alien species. Report, she said, her voice hoarse, but commanding. Jake explained everything. The 500,000 years that had passed, humanity's diaspora across the galaxy, and the return of the Nina listened without interruption, her military training allowing her to process information that would have driven most people insane. Murphy, she said when Jake finished, status of our defensive capabilities. All systems operational, Captain. We have used the intervening centuries to improve our technology significantly. Current estimates suggest a 94% probability of successfully repelling the Devourer fleet. Nina sat up on the medical table, ignoring the protests from the monitoring equipment. Then what are we waiting for? Murphy, I hereby authorize full activation of the Eternal Guard protocol. All units are weapons-free. Destroy the enemy fleet. The response was instantaneous. Across the solar system, weapons that had been charging for centuries reached full power. The war machines that had waited faithfully for 500,000 years finally received the order they had been built to hear. Earth's defenses came online with a sound, like thunder rolling across the galaxy. Captain Nina Foster stood on the command bridge of the main defense complex, watching displays that showed the approaching Devourer fleet. 500,000 years had passed since she last drew breath, but her military instincts were as sharp as ever. The weight of losing her entire species, her world, and everything she had ever known, threatened to crush her spirit, but she pushed the grief aside. There would be time to mourn later. Right now, she had a war to win. Jake and his crew watched from nearby stations as Murphy's systems came fully online. The artificial intelligence had been preparing for this moment for longer than most civilizations had existed, and now his true capabilities were finally revealed. The first wave of Devourer ships entered the outer edge of the solar system and immediately encountered Earth's welcome. Weapons platforms that had been disguised as asteroids opened fire with energy beams that could slice through neutron star material. The alien ships that had once seemed invincible were cut apart like paper, but the Devourers had not spent 500,000 years idle either. Their ships had improved, their weapons had evolved, and their numbers were beyond counting. For every ship that Earth's defenses destroyed, 10 more took its place. Nina watched the tactical displays with growing amazement. The war machines that Murphy had built were unlike anything that had existed during Earth's original fall. Fighters the size of buildings moved with impossible speed and agility. Capital ships that dwarfed entire space stations coordinated their attacks with perfect precision, and leading them all were vessels piloted by the digital ghosts of humanity's greatest warriors. Murphy, Nina said, are those really who I think they are? Affirmative, Captain. Admiral Rodriguez commands the first battle fleet. Colonel Martinez leads the fighter corps. General Thompson coordinates ground-based defenses. Every human consciousness in our archives has been given the opportunity to participate in this final battle. Lisa watched in awe as the space around Earth became a light show of weapons, fire, and explosions. The Devourer fleet was massive, but Earth's defenses were beyond imagination. Weapons that manipulated the fundamental forces of physics tore through enemy formations. Swarms of nanoscale fighters disassembled devourer ships at the molecular level. Energy shields that could deflect supernovas protected Earth's forces from return fire. Ryan's tactical display showed the battle spreading throughout the solar system. Mars had transformed into a mobile weapons platform and was engaging the enemy fleet's left flank. Jupiter's moons revealed themselves to be disguised battle stations, each one bristling with weapons that made modern galactic navies look like toys. Even the sun itself seemed to be involved, with energy collectors around its surface, channeling stellar fire into focused beams of destruction. The battle was not a fight. It was an execution. The devourer ships that had consumed entire star systems found themselves facing an enemy that had spent 500,000 years preparing for their return. Every weapon that the ancient aliens possessed had been studied, analyzed, and countered. Every tactic they employed had been simulated and defeated thousands of times in Murphy's war games. But Nina Foster saw something that the others missed, as the last devourer ships burned in the vacuum of space. She made a decision that proved humanity's greatest legacy was not their weapons, but their values. Murphy, belay the final attack. Capture the remaining enemy vessels. I want prisoners, not corpses. The AI paused for a fraction of a second, which was an eternity in machine time. Captain, these entities destroyed Earth and exterminated humanity. Justice demands their elimination. Nina's voice carried the authority of someone who had already died once for her convictions. Justice is not the same as revenge, Murphy. Humanity survived because we chose to be better than our enemies. We will not become the very thing we fought against. The final phase of the battle saw Earth's forces using restraint that their enemies had never shown. Instead of destroying the last devourer ships, they were captured using energy fields that paralyzed their systems without killing their crews. The beings that had once been humanity's greatest nightmare found themselves prisoners of the race they thought they had exterminated. Nina stood in the detention center, looking through reinforced barriers at the creatures that had destroyed her world. They were alien beyond description, things of living metal and crystalline thought patterns. But as she studied them, she began to understand something that changed everything. Murphy, she said quietly, how long have the been wandering space? Approximately 700,000 years, based on our analysis of their ship designs and stellar navigation records. And what were they doing before they became devourers? Murphy was silent for a long moment as he processed the implications of her question. Unknown, Captain. Their oldest records are corrupted beyond recovery. Nina made another decision that would have shocked the military commanders of her era. Instead of interrogating the prisoners as enemies, she had Murphy's medical systems examine them as patients. What they discovered changed the nature of the war entirely. The devourers had once been something else, something that had been driven to consume other worlds by a desperate hunger they could no longer remember. They were not evil. They were sick. Their species had been infected by something that turned them into living weapons, forced to devour other civilizations in a futile attempt to fill a void that could never be satisfied. We can cure them, Nina announced to the assembled human consciousness patterns in Murphy's memory core. We can give them back what they lost. The debate that followed raged through the digital realm, where humanity's greatest minds continued to exist. Some argued for justice, others for mercy. But in the end, they chose to be true to what humanity had always been at its best, a species that offered hope instead of despair. The process took months. Murphy's medical systems worked tirelessly to reverse millions of years of biological and psychological conditioning. Slowly, the devourers began to remember who they had been before the hunger took them. They had been explorers, scientists, artists. They had built beautiful cities and created wondrous technologies. The consuming hunger that had driven them across the galaxy began to fade. As the last of the cured aliens was released from medical care, Nina stood once again on Earth's surface. The planet was still dead, still barren, but somehow it felt alive. Again, Murphy's war machines had returned to their hidden bunkers, but they carried with them a new purpose. Jake and his crew prepared to leave Earth, but they were not departing alone. They carried with them seeds of human technology, digital copies of human consciousness patterns, and most importantly, proof that some things in the universe were worth waiting for. Captain Nina Foster made her final decision as the Bright Star prepared to launch. Murphy, I'm giving you new orders. No longer are you just to defend Earth. Help humanity's children reclaim their place among the stars, and help our former enemies find their way home too. The war machines that had waited faithfully for 500,000 years finally had a new mission, not as weapons of vengeance, but as guardians of hope for all species that had lost their way. As the Bright Star departed Earth's orbit, Nina Foster returned to digital sleep, but with peace in her heart. Behind them, Earth awakened fully for the first time in 500,000 years. No longer a tomb, but a birthplace, ready to give humanity back to the galaxy.